super humid out, hasn't been running a while, that's why the water on the tailpipes. There you go. Good morning and welcome back to the channel. Just behind me is my 2007 GT500. And today we are starting a process that I've wanted to do for a very long time. We are gonna cam this car. We're gonna do it with the motor in. I don't have access to a lift, and the lifts, well, that's not totally true, but the lifts I do have access to are gonna be outdoors. I'm not interested in leaving this thing far away and outdoors for a couple days while I do this. So I'm going to be doing a cam install inside the garage. Let's go ahead and get started. I went ahead and put up the car onto ramps this way, just mini ramps I made so I can get a jack under there easier if I need to get down there. Before we go ahead and get started on tearing anything down, I'm gonna go over real quickly basically everything I got. First thing I need is a workshop manual. So I didn't buy this. This is a free manual you can get, and it says 2005 Mustang, workshop manual, powertrain, group 3 engine. This covers pretty much all of them. So it's kind of a challenge to navigate this particular manual. However, if you start at 2005, you go down to power control and emission, or workshop manuals, sorry, there we go. You can go to powertrain, and then you got group 3 engine, group 7 manual, blah, blah, blah. So we're gonna go to group 3 engine. And then down here you got your 4.63 valve and 5.44 valve. That's the one that we care about. So you go into that one, and then you can go into assembly, diagnostic testing, assembly, disassembly. So you got all the stuff you need to do. So in-vehicle repair is where I'm going. And then you have all the things. So you got camshaft, left hand, right hand. And then as you comb through this, you're gonna see there's certain tools that they want you to have. We don't necessarily need all these. But as you go through this, they're gonna tell you how to do stuff, and they're gonna reference other parts of the manual a lot. So it's kind of a bit of a challenge, but this is what I'm gonna use. This is what I'm gonna go through. Let's see if we can find a reference point that I was looking for. Interesting, this one actually does not have any. So, but yeah, all you need is your camshaft, crankshaft pulley, like everything you need to know about how to take this thing apart. Engine front cover we're gonna need to take apart. So you got a whole bunch of stuff in here, and that's the workshop manual. So they suggest using a couple other things. We're not gonna be using a lot of the hoist tools and stuff. I believe you can do this without it. However, a caveat to that is we are gonna need to remove at least part of the bastard brake cylinder from my understanding to be able to get this valve cover off here. So 4 valves are big motors. There's gonna be a lot going on in here, but we'll get through it. So now, as for the parts, so obviously we have our camshafts. These are off-the-shelf L&M NSR cams. See them right here. There's nothing special about them. They are the general L&M camshafts. Wanted to go with a proven design, so we went ahead and did that. Before I ordered anything, I went ahead and got in touch with a tuner. So the tuner I decided to go with was BJ McCarty from Venomous Tuning, and that's pretty much, that's the first phone call I made before I even started this process. I told him, hey, I want to cam my car. What should I look for and what should I do? So I'm running the VMP Gen 2. This is the Gen 2 blower, not the Gen 2R. Not sure what the differences are, to be honest. I think the R is better airflow, I don't know. But it's 2.3 liter TVS. Currently has a 3-inch pulley on it. I've been down to the 2.7, doesn't matter. 3-inch was on here now, so I asked, what do I need to do to be able to do 93 with the cams and kind of get the most out of this combo I could? So he started off saying, he said VMP 2.8-inch pulley, so we're gonna gain 2 pounds of boost, but we're gonna lose those 2 pounds of boost, 2 to 4, something like that, with the camshaft by opening up the flow. So that's the first thing to be aware of. So we got our pulley. L&M low vacuum bypass is gonna be required to go on the blower, so the blower needs to come off. Went ahead and picked up an OEM timing kit, and just because I already had this on hand for a different project, but I'm gonna use it anyway, MMR billet crankshaft gear. We're gonna make sure we don't have any issues there. So went and got new intake gaskets right there for, not intake gaskets, new valve cover gaskets. And then obviously we need our SCT X4 tuner. These are the cables that go with it. I have the auxiliary cable that plugs in here, and that's hooked up in the car right now. And I have it just feeding the wideband information into here. You're gonna need a laptop. For the remote tuning, obviously, you're gonna be able to data log with that. I went ahead and picked up a brake vacuum pump kit. I don't know if I'm gonna need it, but I went ahead and picked it up anyway. Obviously, oil filter, oil, Motorcraft 5W50. I've used AMSOIL in the past. I just decided to go with Motorcraft this time. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Full synthetic 5W50 is what you need. Bunch of coolant pre-mixed. We're gonna be basically taking off the entire front end of the car here to get to the timing cover, so the coolant system's gonna have to be drained and come off. So we're gonna put new coolant stuff on there. And this is a cool little tool he suggested. So this is for moving the valve valve springs, something like, not the valve springs, there's something that goes on there that we need to basically pry down. This is an indexing ratchet tool. Pop this guy in, kind of pain in the butt, and we'll be able to pry out what we need to pry out. Assembly loop for the new cams, and then Permatex Ultra Gray gasket maker for the few spots on the timing cover. This also does come with a new timing cover or front cover gasket and all that stuff, so should be good there. But that is pretty much everything I have for right now. Obviously an assortment of tools. This is stuff I've been collecting. We'll see what we need. And if you really pay close attention to the video, you'll be able to mark down exactly what tools you need. So that's pretty much it there. So, and the main reason I haven't done this in forever is I've been waiting to get a garage. Now that I have that, I have the money, I figured might as well get started on this project. So without further ado, we're gonna start tearing everything apart on this car and get it ready for, well, we got exposed to cams and we got exposed to front timing cover because we're doing a new timing set. So that's gonna involve a lot of teardown. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start off disconnecting the battery here. Should be pretty simple. 8mm, and I'm using a 5/16 because my 8mm socket went missing, but you get the idea. Pop off that guy. And the battery tie down. Obviously we're doing this because we don't want any electrical issues while we pull everything apart. And then it needs to come out anyway because the battery tray is gonna have to come out to get that valve cover exposed right over here. So that's pretty much what we're after. And then I like to set stuff, anything that comes out of this side of the car goes on this side of the car. Anything that comes out of this side of this car gets set down on that side of the car to help with organization. So that's out, we're already here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop out the battery cover just because it's convenient. 3 bolts, we got one here, and one down here. So I'll meet back with you guys in a minute. All right, battery tray's out. Set this down. I'm gonna be cleaning up all this stuff. That's another reason taking it all apart. I'm gonna clean up all this stuff before it goes back together so we have a nice clean engine bay. All right, battery and battery tray is out. So passenger side is probably gonna be pretty easy because that already cleared up a lot. All right, so next thing I wanna go ahead and take off is this crossbar right here. It's just the strut tower support brace. And there's 2 bolts on this side, 2 on that side. We're gonna take them off, put the bolts back on, and then move that out of the way. All right, so next thing I want to go ahead and do is take off the intake. So I'm running a JLT 123 intake and got one hose clamp right here, hose clamp right here and here. So the way I'm going to do this, take off this guy first. There's 2 bolts, 1 or 2 bolts on this box. We're going to take this thing out, unplug the MAF sensor right here. You can do that, well, I'll do that in a minute. There's a red tab underneath that you got to pop out. You can't get at this angle, but pop that out. And you got a little vacuum line right here, which comes off. And we're gonna take off this one. We'll leave this one on, and the whole intake is gonna come off. That's gonna free up some more space. All right, so next up, we're gonna go ahead and take the throttle body off. 4 bolts, 2 here, 2 here, 2 plugs, and this thing can come off next. All right, so that pretty much does it for the super simple, easy stuff. Now for the fun part. So, got to take off the cooling system. The reason for that is we need to get to the front timing cover, and obviously that's behind a bunch of crap. Got to get the belts off, you know, all that fun stuff. So, got two cooling systems here. We got the supercharger side and the engine coolant side. I'm going to do these separately. Hopefully, I don't overflow my fill bucket. But yeah, so I think the thing that makes the most sense to do, I'm going to go ahead and jack up the car a little further, get it on jack stands and get these wheels out of the way. And the reason for that is I want to take the front bumper off. I'm thinking with the front bumper removed, I'll be able to have a lot easier access to the radiator area and a couple other things. So this cover comes up pretty easily. You can pull on the cover and you can see it pops up. So we're going to go ahead and basically pop this type of stuff off relatively easily. I'm missing a few bolts, so it's a little easier for me than it might be for you. But you can see it doesn't really expose that much. What I want to do anyway, is get this whole thing out of the way. One, so I don't scratch it up, and two, so I can get in here a little bit easier. So this is our radiator. Yeah, I want to make sure this is the radiator. So this is gonna have to come out so we can get the balancer out easier. I figure if I'm going this far, might as well. I don't know, we might need to take the front bumper off. We'll see, but I'm gonna either way, cooling system's gotta come off next, so let me go ahead and start with that. All right, so we're gonna start with the coolant system. We're gonna go ahead and start with the supercharger side, and then we'll go ahead and get the engine side. So mine, I have this aftermarket what is this? Anon. I've actually never even read that before. Anon supercharger tank, it's a 1.5 gallon ice tank basically. And I saw this little extra hose in here so it can drain out and pee all its coolant out right there. So basically, we're just gonna start draining everything. Should be super fun. All right, so while it's draining, I'm gonna go ahead and use an 8mm, pop off on the coolant tank holder. This is the only thing holding this tank on right here. So I'm gonna get this off and then disconnect some hose clamps. You got one on the back side, one in the front, and one in my little drain tube, and this guy can come on out next. We're definitely gonna spill some fluid. There's really no way around that. It kind of sucks. But it is what it is. And trying to contain as much of it as I can. So that's the next little step. Somewhat convenient, and I wasn't expecting that, but because this lower hose sits lower than everything else, the system's actually draining backwards. So my intercooler and all that is running out, slowly draining into my drain pan there. So that's nice. I'm gonna let that go before I take this tank out. All right, so next thing I wanna go ahead and while it's still draining, I'm gonna disconnect this hose right here. This runs over to my intercooler water tank. So just a pair of pliers, we're gonna pop that clamp off and slide that hose out. You may need a pick to be able to get under there, get the rubber loosened up and get it to slide out. All right, so we're underneath the car, went ahead and jacked it up, put it on jack stands and took off the wheels. So just because I wanted up a little higher and easier access. So we're gonna go ahead and take off this plate right here. It's plastic covering. It is a 7/32 bit, smallest one I've ever seen, but there's 1, 2, 3 bolts there. And it looks like 4 along the front here. So we're gonna go ahead and pop this guy off. And our radiator drain is actually right here. Nothing too crazy. I'm also gonna pop off, this goes to our intercooler. So I'm gonna pop off this bottom hose here and let any remaining water drain out of there, or coolant drain out of here. And then we'll go ahead and start on the radiator next. But let's go ahead and get this cover off next. I need more access under here to be able to see stuff. All right, so we're just gonna let that drain out, and it looks like it's just about done there. That'll get out the last of the coolant in our system. As far as the supercharger coolant system is concerned. Now I should also note, I'm running an AFCO dual fan heat exchanger right up in here. So I don't know for a fact that this is gonna be here on your factory car if you have a factory one, but this line is where it is on mine. This goes right into the lower part of the AFCO dual fan. So just a heads up. All right, so the next thing I went ahead and got a little piece of fuel hose that I had. I think this is, let's see, water hose, my bad. Doesn't matter, I had this sitting around the garage, but I stuck it on the end of the nipple right here for the radiator. And then that is basically because I don't want this thing spewing out all over the place and uncontrollably. I want it going into my nice little drain pan here. And 19 millimeter to open it up. And it's just a plastic plug, but essentially this will let me stop it when I want to, you know, have it stop draining for a bit. Let's see now. Well, that's irritating. I'd like this to drain. There we go. So now you can see it's draining out of here. So it's going to be kind of a slow drain. Nothing too crazy. It's dripping out of the plug as well. Not usually. Let me open up the radiator cap, see if it speeds up at all. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let that go. And once it's done drained out, we'll meet back up again. All right, so now it's drained out of the tank. That the reservoir is now empty, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Take off these clamps right here. I'm going to leave this assembly attached to the reservoir, and then there's two 10 millimeters. And then you have your lower radiator hose or reservoir hose right here that has a clamp on it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that off next. All right, so next thing I'm going to do that makes the most sense to me, I'm going to go ahead and take the radiator out. We're going to unplug the fan and these 4 bolts, and then we got one hose here and one on the bottom side on this side, and we're going to be able to take the whole radiator out. The whole point of that, fan and radiator can come out together, and that'll clear up a whole bunch of space in here to be able to work on the front end of this car. So that, I think, is the next plan. So let's go ahead and hop to it. All right, so I ran into a bit of a snag with the radiator. Looks like the AC condenser is attached to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take off the front bumper. That'll let me access pretty much everything I need to under here, around the crash bar and everything. I think overall it's just gonna be easier, so we're gonna go and do that next. I did disconnect the upper radiator hose, disconnected the fan. The plug is a pain in the butt. I wound up sticking a pick in the opposite side and pulling the latch open that way. So, well, let's go ahead and get started on the bumper. Now, I've taken off these bumpers before, not on the GT500, but on GT. Pretty similar, it looks like. You can see there's our fender liner up here. We got one plastic plug right there, and then we got a couple of Phillips head screws up in here. Pardon the dirt. Went through a mud puddle a while back and never actually cleaned under here. So we're gonna go ahead and pop out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 pin. I don't think I need to take the entire liner out. I just need to get it to be out of the way so I can get to the bolts that hold the bumper on. We'll see how this works out. All right, so now that we got that off, we have 3 plugs you can see right there. Those gotta come off, and then these bolts right here, those 2 are what hold the front bumper lip on there. So the 10 mil will take those out. So unplug these 3, take those out. I took off the liner on the other side. There was 1 pin right here, right there that I missed. So don't miss it. I snapped that one off to get a replacement at some point. So we can do that. And then we'll take off these 2 right here. The whole bumper should come off. So let me go ahead and get this off. Yeah, the one I missed, I'm trying to think, we had one right there. There's one somewhere around here that I missed. I think it's, I don't know, I'll have to find it. But this one's actually missing a few. So let's go ahead and take this guy off next. All right, so now the front bumper's off, we can see the bolts we need to get to. So there's 4 10 millimeters. One is right in here, next is from the bottom. So we'll take that guy off. One is right here. Take that guy, it's like an 8 mil, so not 10, but get the idea. And then looks like we got 2 on this side. Now this one I'm a little curious about. This one's kind of hidden behind the radiator, so I might need a special, not a special, but use a flat wrench to get to that one right there. And then we got 1 more right here. So let me go ahead and pop these off next, and we'll see if that lets me pull out the radiator without anything. All right, so I was just working on a second ago is getting this radiator hose off right there. Just got a clamp and then you just kind of work it back and it pops off. So we're getting there. This guy needs to separate from the radiator. That's my issue. So being a stud, wondering if I can actually just unscrew it. Actually might work out the best. I didn't think about that. Well, let's keep going. There's a little star point. See if I can get that off. All right, so after messing around a little bit, I can't seem to figure out how to get this thing out. So I got a pair of pliers and little lock jaws are actually doing the trick to twist this stud out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this one out, get the other side out, and I think we should be able to pull this radiator straight up then. But that's what's connecting the radiator to AC condenser right now. It's very, very irritating. So thankfully they made this thing removable. I think if you got a small enough, I think it's a 6-point socket, you can get it, but I don't have one. So we're doing this. And it's working. There we go. Oh, outstanding. There's a washer in there to keep it from coming all the way out. So we'll see if we can get this to work or not. All right, so I found out that bolt's a negative of a T30. So I have a T30 bolt here, T30 hex bolt. And that is, this guy fits in. And I took it, put a responding nut on the opposite side, tighten down, so that now I can put a socket on here and wrench this guy out normally. So that's the plan. All right, let's see if this works. This is a pain in the rear. Of course, glad you guys saw that. I love coolant. All right, let's try this again. All right, and it's working. That's outstanding. So I'm gonna go ahead and twist this guy out real quick. A little extension, much happier. And I can't believe that actually worked. So popping that stud out now. There we go. Same thing on the other side. And hopefully they'll be able to let me separate these two and pull this thing up. Well, that was a pain in the butt, but the trick is when you're coming up, go as far toward the fuse box as you can, and it'll pop out a lot easier that way. So now we have all this outstanding room in the front of the motor. Time to keep pulling it apart. So I'm gonna continue dismantling the cooling system. I think that makes the most sense to get all this stuff out of the way and start exposing the front of the motor. And well, we'll just kind of keep going and see where things take us. But I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this mess first. I just pulled a bunch of coolant out of the radiator and everything, and I kind of want to get that all sorted out. And then we'll continue. But yeah, this is the bottom radiator mount. I think it was a pain in the butt. I do not want to leach or do the AC system right now. I have zero intentions of opening it up, and I'm going to keep it that way. So that's kind of why I haven't messed around with the AC at all. Compressor's way down at the bottom over there. I think it should be well enough out of the way that it's not going to cause any problems. All right, so now that the radiator's out, next thing I want to go ahead and do is take off the rest of the cooling components just because they're in the way and I need this stuff out of here. So we're going to disconnect this hose from right here. This whole thing is an external bracket. It looks to be held on by 1, 2, probably 14mm bolts right there. Hopefully you can see those. That'll take off this assembly. We're going to remove this one supercharger coolant bracket from right here, or bolt that goes, or hose rather, that goes right there with one clamp. Take off this clamp over here, and then we got this whole contraption of stuff. We have one hose that comes off the water pump right here. I don't think it goes into or out of, doesn't really matter. And we have one around the bottom that I think goes to the oil cooler, if I'm not mistaken. Seems to plug in somewhere down there. I'll show you when I do that one underneath. And then we should be able to pull out this entire contraption of hoses here, get that out of the way. So back to time lapse, let's keep going. All right, so everything on the top side is disconnected. We've got 2 bolts out of here, and there's one little bolt on a bracket right there, and that is this little guy, 8 mil. And that just goes onto the end of the pulley. So this is also a coolant hose, a hard line. And I do believe these both run down to the oil cooler, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know. So I'm gonna go into there and we'll see what they hook up to and disconnect them. Then we should be able to pull out the entire coolant assembly. You can see it's pretty loose now. Just got 2 more lines on the bottom to do. All right, so underneath right here, these are the 2 coolant lines, one right there and one right here. So I'm gonna pop these clamps off. Hopefully we'll get them out. And yes, that is indeed the oil cooler back there. So at least now we know where that goes. Let's go ahead and get these guys off. All right, now that I got that bottom piece out, should be good. Just lift this whole assembly out, like so. Hopefully we don't spill too much coolant. All right. Whoop, looks like I missed one. Let me show you where I missed one at. We got a one more line over on this side. So I missed one coolant line right here. So let me go ahead and pop that guy off. Didn't see that one. Honestly, I have no clue what this goes to, so maybe oil cooler. I thought the bottom 2 were oil cooler. So honestly, I'm not sure what that one goes to, but go ahead and keep working it off. Yeah. All right, let me get this wrestle with this guy real quick with the pick. And pliers. Just really being a turd. Just to break it loose basically is all I'm trying to do, and I can slide off the pipe. There we go. All right, get this whole piece out of the way. This whole monstrosity of a coolant hose. Set this off to the side now. All right, now we have a front area mostly exposed, so that's nice. Man, it's a pain in the butt. So, well, let's see. See what I want to do next. All right, so next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is pop off the belts. Also, I was mistaken. These 2 bolts are 13 millimeter, not 14. So we're gonna go ahead and pop off the outer belt. Just use a 14 millimeter. Oops, wrong way. And we got the tensioner right here. Pop that guy off. So we'll take out the serpentine accessory belt. This thing, by the way, with everything in the way, is a real pain in the butt. So if you're taking this off, change it out while you got the chance, because it really does suck. I have a new one, I think. So 1 belt. And then we got our big boy over here. It's the 1/2-inch tensioner. I believe it's like racing, the American, I don't remember. It's like Thump Racing or something like that. Heavy duty tensioner. Holy crap. Man, is it heavy duty. Probably also I'm pushing the right way, but you get the idea. All right, so we'll pop this guy off right here. Got our other belt off. This is a new Supercharger belt, which did fix my belt squeak, by the way. I don't know if you watched my last videos on that, but I had a belt squeak and it was the Supercharger belt. Come on, thing. Oh yeah, that's right. Also, you do have to remove the tensioner because there's no way, or the belt tensioner. There's no way to get this belt off of here without it. So mine, it's a Allen head. So let me go and pop that off real quick, then we can get our belt out. All right, so if you're curious, the belt is a 5/16 size Allen head to get the tensioner off. I'm gonna also clean all this stuff up before it goes on, because Honestly, it's pretty filthy in here. Now we'll go and pop our tensioner off. And that'll let us get our belt off. Which I always forget about this. Every time I change out this belt, I forget that you gotta take the tensioner off. It's very irritating. Alrighty. And that's that. Supercharger belt and tensioner are now off. Let's see if I have a brand name on here. Yeah, Thump RRR Racing heavy duty tensioner. So that's what this guy is. Yeah, now our belt's off and we're gonna keep on going. Next up, I think I'm gonna take a pause on working on front stuff just because I'm kind of at a standstill. I'm not really sure where I should go from here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on taking off the supercharger. I think that's gonna clear up a good amount of space and then we can see kind of a better idea of what needs to come off next. So supercharger is gonna be interesting. I've never taken this off before nor installed one, so I'm gonna figure it out. But I'm gonna start with all these vacuum lines. We got some here, PCV lines. So this is gonna come off. We got one back here, low vacuum bypass is this guy, or vacuum bypass is this guy right here. So we're gonna take that off. Brake booster side off. I believe the fuel rails are gonna have to come off because we got this crossover tube that goes directly over top of the supercharger. Now what I'm curious about is on this side, and you'll find out in a minute, but the fuel injectors are obviously covered by the top of this inlet. Now on the factory one, there's a bracket here that lets you pull off this inlet. Obviously the VMP one does not have that. So it's gonna be interesting. I think I'm gonna watch an install video on how VMP installs these things, and then from there kind of go backwards. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do, and we'll see what happens. All right, so we're gonna start on this side. Found an instruction install for a Whipple, close enough, and start taking everything off. So let's see. That pops off like so. This guy pops off, so we go to JLT, which I don't think this is a great catch can design because I'm noticing like you got a very tiny little amount of oil sludge in there. I don't think it really catches much, so you have to look into a different JLT. I don't know what generation this is, but the 3.0 is supposed to be really good. Unrelated, pop this guy off. Let's see, I got to disconnect. There's a vacuum hose down here. This is for the fuel pressure sensor. There's a vacuum hose right here we can pull off. And for the fuel pressure guys. Now, I totally forgot to depressurize my fuel system. So we're gonna get a little spurt out when we have to eventually disconnect it. That kind of sucks. There's a PSI regulator right here. So this is all disconnected now. Let's see, we got wiring harness. We'll just continue on going around. Let's see what we need to do next. All right, so next up, they want us to disconnect this hose in the rear here. Sorry for the poor lighting, but it's located right back in here. Just a vacuum line. So pull down this clamp. And then I'm gonna grab my, all right, so pull down the clamp and grab my pick again right here. And go ahead and just pop this line off next. All right, so that line's now off. Take the line off the vacuum bypass back here. Just proving to be a real turd. Try and reaccess that one from the other side. So on this side, we have our brake booster vacuum line located conveniently on top here. I'll figure out how to pull that guy off so I can push in. Oil sludge or something right there. So this guy comes off now. Got another vacuum line right here we're going to take off. So that guy's off now. Put these off to the side over here. This one looks to run around to, I think it's an evap canister. I'm not really sure what this guy is. But let's see if I can get a better grip. The vacuum bypass hose. That thing's a turd. There we go. So this guy right here, I'll put that up. And I believe It seems to be all the vacuum lines coming out of the supercharger. No! Alright, that's all the vacuum lines coming off. Let's see what they want to do next. Alright, next up they want us to remove the IAT2 temperature sensor, which is right here. So let me grab my pick again. Push in right here. Pop that guy off. Alright, now that's out of the way. Tuck these a little out of the way if we can. They're over there now. I'm gonna get some cloth if I have to remove this fuel line next. This can be a turd. Alright, so we gotta remove this fuel line next. If you're wearing a belt, be careful you don't ding it on your car. I'm trying to be real careful about that. So we're just gonna wrap this guy up in a nice Alright, so this clip kind of goes down. Okay, cool. We didn't just like send fuel everywhere. Sure, now it's there. So the fuel's off. Glad it was depressurized. Cool. Small fire hazard, no biggie. This is where it gets interesting. So I don't think I can remove the. I don't believe I can remove the fuel rails, supercharger in the way. Don't think I can take the supercharger off without removing the fuel rails. I don't think. So I need to figure out how to do that. Let me do some research real quick and see how to get that. All right, so looks like next step, we're gonna pop off one side, start moving the supercharger, and then do the other side. So we got two 8mm. Holy crap, these things are tight. Pull the fuel rails on. So these guys, they look important. What I'm doing with my bolts, I'm taking them all off, setting them aside, and then whenever I move a part around, the bolts go with it so we don't lose it. Right, so that's off. We're going to need to disconnect the injectors in a minute too. Right, so that's off. That's 3 of them. There's 4 of these guys, so let's go ahead and get the injectors in the injector harness. Unclipped, usually push down and pull up and it comes off like so. Just trying to get this. Alright, well, maybe down, up, down, up, down, up. So these are now disconnected. This thing is just basically loose here, so we'll tuck this underneath the window wiper, get it out of the way. That I believe goes to the EGR, but mine has been deleted, so. Next fun bit, we got to pop up. Disconnect this guy. Just kind of lean this harness out of the way for now. One more clip that doesn't quite want to come out. Well, we don't really need that out right now. So, that's that. Whoop. Crap, that's a lot of fuel. Alright, fire hazard. Let me grab some paper towels and soak that up. Do not want massive amounts of loose fuel everywhere. That's frowned upon. I frown upon that. Very carefully. All right, if your car is dirty, take a vacuum and clean out all this crap in here first before pulling it out. But there we go. G1000 fuel injectors. I'm gonna clean all this stuff up beforehand, so I'm not super worried about it, before it goes back in. That side's off. All right, so next up, there's supposed to be 10 bolts. For the supercharger, I count they're a 13mm. I can see 5 of them. I don't know where the rest are. And, or I can see 9 of them, sorry. I think one's underneath that throttle area. So we'll find out how that works in a minute. So let me go ahead and pop these guys out real quick. Okay, so there's obviously there's supposed to be 2 more bolts. There's obviously at least 1 somewhere. So got off 5 on this side, 3 on this side. There's supposed to be 10 total. I go try and figure out how the heck to access that last one. It's somewhere over there. All right, so I found one. There's an Allen head, 7/32 located directly back here. Right here. So let me go ahead and get that one out. May or may not be the last one, I do not know. Okay, that seems to be all of them. So I guess they just either plugged up the last bolt hole or something else, I don't know. Pull this guy off now. Alrighty, supercharger is off. Alright, supercharger's off now. We can see our last intake manifold bolt right here. Looks like this one just plugged. They're not even plugged, just didn't have a bolt in it at all. I wonder if that's creating any kind of vacuum leak. I guess we'll find out when we pull that off. Actually, I don't know if nope, we don't actually have to pull this guy off, which is nice and convenient. I have 0 plans on doing so. Some kind of rubber gasket around the heat exchanger there. Looks to be in pretty good shape. I don't see any issues with that. So looks like we're good to go. I'm gonna pull off this other fuel rail real quick. And then, yeah, so all I needed to get that off for was do the low vacuum bypass, and I can get to the heads and everything without pulling anything else off. So I don't see a reason to pull off the actual intake manifold, so I'm not going to, because that would kind of suck. All right, so next thing I'm going to go ahead and do now that the supercharger's off, fuel rails are off. I think the next thing I really need to get out of the way is the wiring harness. It's just kind of all over everything, which makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this harness off. We got a couple of lines, so we got a plug-in right there. We got one that runs down to the alternator, little sensor right there, and then that's pretty much it. Then it runs down back that way into the valve cover for the ignition coils. And I think we can peel it back pretty much to this side. Goes to the ignition coils over here. And this harness just comes in all the way around right through here. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can't peel this whole thing back and just drape it over the side of the car over here. I think that's the next step. The valve covers need to come off and the ignition coils need to get unplugged to do that. So, or not valve covers, but the ignition coil covers need to come off to be able to do that. So we're gonna go ahead and knock that out next. All right, so I was mistaken a little bit. So that's that same wire that comes around, it goes to the alternator right there, and then it continues on and goes into a plug right over, where are you? I don't know if you can see it up in there. Where the heck is it? It's like located on the oil cooler. Sorry, there we go. Goes to a plug right there. So that's going to be one that we'll forget all about. So make a note of it right now. But I'm going to unplug that guy first and then work my way around. It's going to be kind of a pain in the butt, but we'll get it. All right, so this is kind of a turd. I don't know if you can see that cable, but it hooks in right there. There's another one a little further back there. And then once we get that out, you go and fish it out that way. So not super ideal, but it is working. And then I unplug the alternator. Oop, it comes off the back of the alternator, no biggie. we can fish it around and pull it up basically. So work on getting these plugs free. And from here we should be able to pull it out. Oh, looks like another little guy is stuck right there. I don't know if you can tell. Use a flathead to pop him out, and then we should be able to pull it up. All right, let's keep on going. So this harness is now free to come up right here. Got a disconnect one that looks like goes to the AC line for pressure sensor probably. One that goes to this head for coolant temperature. And that's all this. So now let's keep on working. Let's see now. We got one that goes to, I don't know what that is. That's got to come out. Right, valve cover's got to come off next. All right, so I keep saying valve covers. What I mean to say is coil covers. These are coming off next. Is a T30 Torx bit. And there's two on this side, and the other side is a 10 millimeter and one T30. And we go ahead and pop these off. These covers come off. I'm gonna go ahead and put you on time lapse for a minute, and you'll see what I'm doing. All right, so I didn't catch that there's one wire that just goes off and somewhere down there, so that's gonna prevent me from pulling this whole harness out, which does kind of suck. But on the bright side, at least now it's over here and not on top of the valve cover. So that should, in theory, make stuff a little easier. I'm gonna go ahead and dive underneath real quick. I don't know what this thing is. Some kind of resistor. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and check under the car to see if I can't pull it out, but odds are pretty slim. Could be the O2 sensors. Honestly, I have no idea. But yeah, so that's a little irritating. We'll see what we can do about that side. Maybe I can have it just both go to the center, and at least that'll be out of the way from the valve covers. We'll see, but I'm gonna work on that side now and get that off. This harness is not gonna move out of the way as easily as I'd like, unfortunately, but this one, the smaller one, can. So it runs down right there. So let me head underneath and see what we can do about that, if anything. Not entirely sure. Just the small harness, there's two down there, but we need the smaller one. So it goes to the AC compressor right there and runs somewhere else underneath. So let's check. All right, so this is the one that goes to the AC compressor, and that's that plug right there. Oh boy, as we come around underneath, following that same plug, looks to run right up in there. So I can tease off right to that thing, so we'll unplug that one next, and then see where it goes from there. All right, so now following it around, looks like it goes up, coming from up there, it goes this little attachment right there, and then runs over to the starter. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that guy off now, because it really just needs to come off to get this harness out of the way so I can get the front cover off as well. So kind of sucks, but go and pull that next. All right, so went ahead and pulled the harness, got it unhooked from the starter, so we're just gonna work our way up. That's here, and I think what I'm gonna do, I'm honestly just gonna zip tie these guys up and out of the way. Maybe get them out of the way completely. So I was trying to figure out what makes the most sense, and up and away is certainly the answer. These here for now. I'm sure they'll get in the way later, but at least for now it's a little bit out of the way, so I don't really want it in the front either. So at least that's a little bit better, you know, not perfect, but it's not covering up the motor anymore. So other than that, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do from there just yet. Put this over here. All right, that seems to be that. This whole cable harness goes into the fuse box, which I don't think I need to remove, but I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see if this needs to come off or not. So let's see what else we got to do now. Next thing I want to go ahead and do is take off the power steering pump assembly. So that includes a reservoir and the pump itself that needs to get moved up here. So my plan looks like it hooks up to a flexible hose down there. There's a bracket on the alternator. This hard line runs up and around and up to a bracket right here, and then into the pump itself right here. So this is also flexible. These can stay close together. So I'm going to attempt to pull out these two bolts right here. They look like 10 mils, 8 mil probably, and the alternator bracket. We'll see if we can swing the whole power steering pump assembly forward and maybe like zip tie it to right here or something. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with that. I'm also trying to avoid opening up the power steering system if I can help it. It's not that it's a big deal to refill it and just let it cycle through and bleed itself, but you know, I don't really want to. So let's see if we can go ahead and get this down here. It's underneath the car. This is that bracket right here. And this is the hard line for the power steering pump. One I was just looking at up top. So let me go ahead and crack this loose, like so. We'll see what we can move around once we get this guy off. All right, so went ahead and popped the bracket off, rotated this guy down. I'm gonna put the nut back here for now so we don't lose it. And this flexible hose is kind of what I'm hoping I can use to move the whole thing out of the way. So we'll see how that works. Let's go back up top and see what we can do. You can kind of see it moving right there. That's the line we're working on. It goes right up against the engine block there. So let's get that off next. So something I didn't think about that you're probably gonna wanna pay attention to as well. My sway bar is not currently on the car because I was driving it without it with drag racing. Honestly, I don't really notice performance difference. I was in curves and going through stuff maybe, but not normal driving. Anyway, you're definitely gonna have to remove that sway bar. That's gonna run right, you know, in the bottom of everything and just kind of be an issue. So don't forget to do that. So power steering line brackets off. Place our bolt in here just so we don't lose it. So it's like directly out of your view. And then we got our power steering pump, which right here looks like 1, 2, 3 10 mil bolts. That's not a bolt, so 1, 2, 3 10 millimeters there. 1, 2 10 millimeters here. And we'll pull that off, see what happens. Alright, so next thing I want to go ahead and take off is the alternator. There's 2 bolts right here. I believe they're 14 or 15. And then that one on the bottom side with that bracket on it. And then obviously the alternator cable. So we're going to go and pull that out of there next. And kind of see where I'm going from here. I'm kind of taking my time with this, just kind of seeing what makes the most sense. But alternator's definitely going to have to come off because it has bolts that go to a bracket, that go to the timing cover, and that needs to come off. So that's coming off next. All right, alternator's off. I think I'm gonna call it quits for this evening. It's around 5 o'clock or so, and I'm honestly pretty tired. I'm working on this since about 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so like 7 hours into this. And I haven't taken breaks, not straight through, but you know what I mean. So I'm gonna call it here. Alternator's off. Stuff we still gotta take off that I'm still trying to figure out. I'm gonna reread over the manual and double check. I haven't used it really honestly at all yet. I'm just kind of looking at stuff and taking it off. I know the balancer's got to come off. I got to figure out what top dead center is before we take that off though, so I'm not going to touch the balancer yet. That's not until later. This valve cover, I'm pretty sure, take off 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bolts. I don't see any back there. I'm pretty sure we can take this valve cover off right now if we wanted to and be fine. This one is the problem child one. So the problem is, old W62's got to come out. That's not a big deal, but the brake booster, very little clearance right there. So we're gonna have to at least loosen the brake booster so we can push it out of the way. Maybe. We'll see how that works out. I don't entirely know how it's gonna work. Might need to take off the master, push it forward, and take off the, no, it doesn't make sense either. I don't know. We'll get to it when we get there. I've heard of also people dropping the K member a couple inches on this side to get it down and away. may do that. I'm not entirely keen on that idea, but we'll see. We will see indeed. So that's where I'm calling it quits for tonight. Get back at it tomorrow morning with some renewed energy and vigor and keep on working. All right, guys, welcome back. It is the next day, so we're going to continue where we left off, and that's pretty much getting ready for the driver's side valve cover to come off and get room there. So let's go ahead and get going. All right, so we got to get the driver's side valve cover off, or at least clearance to get it off. First thing I'm going to go ahead and do, this little guy, I don't know what this canister is, but it has 2 cables right here, this one, and then 2 vacuum lines. Sorry, 1 cable pops off, and then we got 2 vacuum lines down there, which look like just finger depressions. You can push them off, and then we can pop in this little clip right here, and this whole device will slide off. So we're gonna set that aside. Then we got a 1 bolt right down in there that you can kind of see for the dipstick tube. So we're gonna pop that off, get the dipstick tube out of the way. And then for the most fun part, which actually unrelated, I just wanted to see if I can move this at all. It looks like there's some flexible lines both here and here. So we may unbolt this AC canister and just see if we can move it up a little bit. Maybe, don't know if we can do that yet, but we'll see. Other than that, just looking around at the moment. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and do that first, and we'll move on to the master brake cylinder. So I was watching talking to a fellow guy on the forums, or rather Facebook, and he was saying the way he did it is he unbolted it, moved it as much as he could, and then threw a ratchet strap around the motor and was able to tweak it that way just enough to get clearance. So might try that, see if we can do that. Not entirely sure, but let's go ahead and get these couple of simple things moved out of the way real quick first. All right, so I wasn't able to get the dipstick completely out of the way. It's interfering with the headers. I just cannot pull it directly up, so hopefully that's out of the way enough. Just kind of angle off to the side. I started turning out the master cylinder, and there's a thing preventing me. There's a little crosshatch in there. My idea was to disconnect the clutch line, which is that one right there, from going, well, to the clutch. However, the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking maybe I don't need to do that, so we shall see. But next step, gotta go in the car. So next step, we gotta go in the car. Gotta disconnect the master cylinder from the brake pedal, which is right there. There's 1, 2 right there. There's 2 more bolts on this side. I think they're probably a 13 or 14 millimeter. I'm not gonna do this part on camera, at least not under here, because I don't have any clearance. But a deep socket and some swivels should get it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that next. Disconnect that guy just so it's out of the way. And go ahead and pop those out. Well, maybe not, we'll see. Got off 1 bolt, still got a couple more to go. This seems to be the easiest way, a little adjustable swivel wrench. This goes on to the brake, over top of the brake pin, just up here. And pardon me, this is very tight, but I'll pull this guy out like that. And then we can get the brake disconnected from the master cylinder. I don't know if there's no washers or anything. Nah, it's disconnected, so when we pull it out, won't try to pull the brake pedal with us. All right, so got it loose. As you can see, I'm grabbing it from here, and the whole thing now moves. I'm gonna remove this vacuum line just so it's out of my way. Put that up here. Actually, we'll put both of these down here. So now, it's not totally free, but it's loose anyway. Let's see what's holding this thing up. Probably the brake lines. All right, well, at this point, it is a loose. Gained a tiny bit of clearance, but not much. So I'm gonna go ahead and honestly, I think there's no time like the present. We're gonna go ahead and pop off the valve cover bolts and see what happens. Looks like you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we're gonna go pop all those off. Honestly, I'm just gonna like I said, I'm just gonna see what happens, see if we can get it off. I don't really know what to expect at this point, so give it a shot. We can always disassemble the master brake cylinder further, but I'd rather not if we can help it, so let's see what happens. All right, so that's gonna be a turd to get back on, but I cheated just a little bit. So loosen up the brake booster, didn't need to loosen up this guy. And then I forgot I have my little Shea brace down there, and I used that to rotate the motor just a little bit. I loosened the motor mounts, I raised that side up just a hair, pulled this side down as far as I could, and yeah, looks like I was able to come out. These guys are for sure shot and leaking into the spark plug holes, so probably need to get these replaced anyway. Should be new ones in there, it's no biggie. But yeah, that's that. So silicone spots are right here. There's our gasket. Looks in decent shape, but I bought a new one just to be safe. Oh, holy cow. All right, so she's off. Sweet. Trying to see what we need to do next in here. So that was the main challenge. We got one off. Let's go ahead and take off the other side, and then we'll work on the timing cover, I guess. But so yeah, for reference, if you can, maybe don't touch that one, but loosen up that, loosen up the motor mounts. There's a bolt right there. There's only one on each side. You can get it with a 15 millimeter, some extensions, and try and rotate your motor this way a little bit, just to drop it down enough to clear. And as you can see, looks like we did. So good to go. See if it's caused any issues down the road. Should be good. Cams look good. There's a little bit of, a few little marks on there here and there, but nothing too bad. Well, bad, it runs great. Shouldn't be anything bad. Timing chains honestly look solid, but yeah, we're gonna replace them anyway. So on the note of timing chains, allegedly this is the weaker one. The primaries, they don't sell an upgraded for, so you run stock ones no matter what. But I'm changing out tensioners and everything with a new set, just to be safe, and should be good to go. I haven't taken the spark plugs out yet. We have to rotate the motor over to top dead center and all that stuff, so we'll get there. But let's get the other valve cover off next. So same deal on this side. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bolts over here. This little, I don't know what this thing is, some kind of resistor or something, but I use a pair of pliers to get the 10 mil off on top of that because it was rotating with me on the other side. So we're gonna do the same thing here and pull it off. So now that we've validated, we can get the valve covers off. Next thing we got to work on is the front cover here. So I'm gonna start with removing the water pump, and I do not honestly see every single bolt. So all these guys gotta come out. Got some here. I don't know if the oil cooler has to come out or not to get this off. We'll find out. But yeah, got a bunch of stuff that needs to come off. So we're gonna start with the water pump. So we got these guys. There's a bolt back in here, which you may or not be able to see. Bolt, probably somewhere around there. They all look like 13 millimeters. So I'm just gonna start pulling stuff off and kind of trying to reveal all the bolts, and we'll see how far we get. So that's the plan is. I don't really know exactly how to do this. I can't find the exact page in the workshop manual that says how to take this thing off. So it is what it is. It kind of starts at step 5 for some reason. So whatever, I'll figure it out. But let's go to time lapse and start pulling stuff off. And then I'll explain basically what I pulled off when the time comes. So that's irritating. I started taking off a water pump and the bolts are behind the balancer. So got to get the balancer off next, it looks like. I'm trying to hold off on this because the Innovators West Incorporated 10% overdrive balancer does not seem to have a top dead center mark. So I'm going to pull out the spark plugs next, stick something down there so I can try and figure out where top dead center is, and then put the car in gear to lock up the motor, and then we'll pull off the balancer next. So that's just going to happen next. All right, so I went ahead and stuck in a super long, clean nail that I had laying around into the number 1 cylinder hole, and rotated the crankshaft a little bit with a, not the right thing, but it's a 15 millimeter. I have the kinetic cranksaver stud in here, so you might have a little bit different size, but just for reference, crankshaft rotates that way. I don't think it's gonna be a huge deal if you rotate it the other way. I did it a little bit just because we went past top dead center, but pretty much number 1 cylinder, all the way to the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the car in gear now, put it into like 4th gear or something just to keep it from moving around to e-brake on. All right, so now we're in gear, and that should, in theory, lock up the motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a breaker bar. We're gonna pop off the cranksaver stud. So that's pretty much just an ARP stud instead of a bolt that goes all the way in. So undo the bolt itself, and then stick an Allen wrench in the stud, undo the stud, and then we should be able to use a puller to get the crankshaft out, I think. Or not crankshaft, balancer. But yeah, let's see what we got. Still trying to figure out exactly how I'm gonna do this. All right, stud came out as one piece, sort of beating some resistance here, and went ahead and pulled the whole stud out at once, so no biggie, but there we have it. All right, well, then I got my 3-jaw puller on the balancer, and we're gonna see how this goes. So, shouldn't take too much effort to get off, hopefully. All right, so I decided against the 3-jaw puller. I was putting a lot of force on it and I don't want to hurt anything. Decided to go ahead and get the actual proper tool, which is this guy right here. So a harmonic balance or puller kit. And went ahead and got an install tool while I was at it as well. Just want to make sure we do this right and not hurt anything. So puller, pretty much duck foot puller right here. And there are 3 I think they're going to be this thread. There's 3 holes in the balancer itself for this to be pulled off with properly. So yeah, I just don't feel like bending the balancer at all or messing it up trying to use 3-jaw. So let's go ahead and install this guy, and hopefully we can get this thing off. It is very stuck on there, so hopefully we can get this off without too much trouble. All right, holy crap, I finally got the balancer to move. Good grief. So I went back to the 3-jaw puller, and this actually really sucks. Using the tool right here, I used the 3 outer bolts on the, on the crank, or the balancer. And according to Innovators West, this particular one doesn't have a picture of it, but there's 3 on mine that fit the puller bolts. Well, put some force behind it, freaking stripped one out, so that sucks. Another move that you can do is you can remove 3 of these inner bolts apparently, which I'll show you in mine when it comes out. However, I did that, and they were pretty small. They were these little guys right here, and this particular puller doesn't go deep enough for these bolts to actually catch. They're too short. So I felt like I could apply a little bit more force with the 3-jaw. I tried using heat on it, even though they do say not to use heat. It could hurt it a little bit, but I was getting a little desperate here. And yeah, now she's coming off. But holy cow. Anyway, what finally worked is took a hammer and actually smacked the puller bolt. I was reading on a LS forum of all things, said you can smack the puller bolt right here, and sometimes that'll be enough to shake it loose. And in my case, it worked. But that truly sucked. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the rest of this thing off, and we'll keep going. But I was gonna be real pissed if I got this far, and that's what made me get stuck. All right, so I'm not gonna pretend, but first off, here's the crank bolt that I was using. So what I did is there's some grease on there, but I basically just drilled a hole in the center, not a hole obviously, but an indent for my puller to sit in, so I wouldn't push on the snout of the crank too hard. I wanted to make sure it was threads and not gonna like bend anything. And then got my stinking balancer off, so this thing. I don't see any damage, thankfully. I don't know if it was just silicone. There's definitely a little ring in here where it was stuck. That's just insane. Now, using the 3-jaw did put a little bit of a damage on the balancer, which does kind of suck. So it didn't like damage it. It looks like the belt area is fine. This does, again, I'm not super happy about this, but what I'm going to wind up doing is taking a Dremel tool and just making sure that there's nothing for the belt to catch. And yeah, it's enough where it might damage the belt a little bit if I don't smooth that out with the Dremel. Unfortunately, I mean, I really didn't have any other choice with this. I couldn't get the, this is where those bolts go for the balancer. So the puller bolts thread into here, 1, 2, and 3. And one of these stripped out, just popped the bolt straight out when I started applying force. So these are the 3 other bolts you could potentially pull out, 1, 2, and 3. It just is what it is. So if you're watching this at home, sorry about that. I mean, it sucks. I'm not super happy about it, but it finally got it off. And we did get at least the proper install tool to put the sucker back on. Just, this is a real turd. So now that the balancer's off, we can get to our last water pump bolt, which is right there. Water pump will come off, and that'll free up some more space up in here. And we'll continue with the disassembly of everything. But yeah, that's that. Definitely unfortunate. I really didn't want to damage anything. Nothing's actually internally damaged, thank God. Crank looks fine. I don't feel any grooves. There's no like crack or anything that I can visibly see anyway, so I think we're good to go. But yeah, the puller was pushing right on the edge of the snout right here, and I just wanted to make sure we didn't like somehow crack the metal or anything. I know unlikely, but gotta be precautious with this stuff. So let's go ahead and get back at it. I'm gonna pull off a water pump next. All right, so water pump's out. The thing was super stuck in there. But I just kind of worked it back and forth. I'm pretty sure it's siliconed in, but I'll read it on the reassembly. Anyway, it's only 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. I took out 2 of the timing cover bolts because I didn't notice it. But yeah, she's out now. So this thing definitely a pain in the butt to get out as well. Everything in this motor is a pain in the butt. Very tight. All right, so next up, I was going to leave all the pulleys on here. However, I can't really tell what's what screw bolts and screws need to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the idler pulleys just so I can get a very clear picture of what I need to do, and it'll help me clean it up later. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do next. All right, so next up, over on this side of the motor is the oil cooler. So this looks like an absolute turd to remove. It runs all the way across from the oil filter up to these little guys right here. This is part of it up here. This whole assembly is just there. So I'm going to attempt to not remove it and see what happens. The very first bolt that needs to come out is located right here, which is probably going to bump into the oil cooler, and that's going to be why I'm going to have to remove it. But I'm going to try that first, and if I can get that bolt out, there's like a few side bolts that go into the timing cover of this one. There's one up here, and that might be it. So let's see what happens. Before the timing cover can come off, we also have to remove the front oil, or the oil pan. We also have to remove the front oil pan bolts. There's one, I think there's, you can feel 1, 2, 3, looks to be 4 that bolt on the bottom of the timing cover as well. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and pop off. Let's see if we can get that one out first. That's the one that I'm actually concerned about. All right, so I kid you not, I've probably been procrastinating for like an hour and a half now trying to figure out a way to do this without doing the deed, but there is no way. So I went ahead and popped the bolt out as far as I could to see if maybe it would clear threads. The answer is no, it does not. So there's no way, I'm not even gonna start removing the timing cover yet. This oil cooler contraption has to come off. And the problem is my freaking Kooks headers block one oil cooler bolt like perfectly. Like there's no, I can't get a ratchet on it. It is perfectly blocked, which is unfortunate. So after looking at this, and this is why I've been procrastinating for the past hour and a half, just kind of stealing myself, I think I need to remove my driver's side header. Actually, I know I need to remove my driver's side header to get access to this. Granted, it'll make it easier in the long run, but it's just such a turd. Really don't want to do that. So I gotta do it anyway. Kind of sucks. The steering shaft runs through the center of the header, so you gotta remove the steering shaft somehow. I'm trying to figure out how to do that as well. I'm looking at it, and it looks like you can remove the intermediate shaft, whatever that means. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to film this part anymore, to be honest, guys. I'm very disappointed, but I'm gonna keep on going. So I'm gonna go into the car, being that not everyone has headers. If you do have headers, RIP. I'm probably just going to time lapse the whole thing, if you even film it. I don't even know. Might just skip right ahead. It's some header bolts and pain and struggling, and they should eventually come out. So that's that. I'm going to go ahead and start working on that, I guess, and see what happens. Honestly, pretty defeated. That just, oh man, does that suck. That sucks a lot. And then the oil cooler, for you who don't know what it looks like, it's this thing, and it hangs out on the driver's side along the head. There's my pipe that's causing me issues, and it just runs the whole length. Oil filter goes onto it and everything. So yeah, bunch of turds. This is the intermediate shaft bolt they want me to disconnect. Looks like that's the driver's side. So I guess we're gonna go and figure that out. Or not driver's side, but the firewall side. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Should be fun. This is the next day. I decided to take a break from yesterday. I was getting frustrated and wasn't expecting to have to take off the headers, which is gonna suck. Driver's side only was doing what has to come off, but it's gonna be a bit of a process. So today's job is taking off the driver's side header. Hopefully we can get the oil cooler off today, and we'll see how it goes from there. But again, really wasn't expecting to have to do that. Didn't look into it close enough, so just keep that in mind. If you have aftermarket headers, they're coming off on the driver's side. So I also went ahead and picked up 2 more gaskets. Got a new oil cooler gasket right here and a water pump gasket. Looks like it's just a big O-ring. I didn't even notice a gasket on my water pump when I took it off. So it's either still in there somewhere or it's just disintegrated. I can feel where the groove is for the O-ring, but yeah. So I needed a new one of those regardless. I don't see it in here, so whatever. But first thing to do on the header removal. So the oil dipstick tube being all cockeyed, start right over the Kooks install, and you have to take off to both motor mounts. The bolts anyway, this motor mount has to come off. You're taking the header off on that side, and you're gonna jack up the engine. So I have a bottle jack and some spacers I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna jack it up somewhere where the corner of the cast iron block is. This way it's properly supported and not having any issues. The other option you can use, Harbor Freight sells a couple of these things. You can use above engine hoist that runs across from shock tower to shock tower. You can use your supercharger bolts and lift it up that way. Not really feeling like I want to do that. Hopefully we have enough clearance back there to lift it up a couple inches, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, got to lift it up under the motor mount to take that out. The steering shaft had to come out, so I went ahead and turned my steering wheel. Without a key in it, you can turn it to a point into the lock. So it's locked in place now because we do not want that turning and messing up the clock spring. So this is now just as it is. And this is your steering shaft. Took this out yesterday. It goes in this orientation. So I'm taking off both bolts. I think this is supposed to be telescoping. Mine is very much not. It is very much stuck in there, so this piece doesn't move in or out one way or the other. So I undid both bolts, and I wasn't really paying attention, but the top slipped out somehow, which is great. And then I was able to push the bottom out, and I got the shaft out here. So as you can see, I kind of got a mess of tools everywhere. I'm gonna go take a minute, put away all the, kind of reorganize myself a little bit, get all this crap out of here. This way I'm not losing anything. And then we will continue on with the header removal. All right, that's a lot better. Cleaned up everything, swept the place. Got it. I feel better now. Things are put away so I can find them again. All right, so what am I going to do now? Got the motor mount bolt right there on this side, so that's got to come out. The other one's already out, and then I'm going to figure out where I want to jack the motor up from. I'm going to use a bottle jack I have, just due to space constraints. I think that makes the most sense. And then we got to get this motor mount out, and that'll let me get access to all the bolts on the header. And we can pull the header out, dipstick tube out, and get it out. So let's go. All right, so you guys know where I'm at. Got the motor mount out, motor jacked up, and I'm working on getting the header bolts out right now. The real pain in the butt. There's this weird little tube. I'll show you in a second. This guy right here. I don't know what this goes to, but I just undid the second bolt, which you may see the latch back there. So now this can move a little bit. I'm hoping we'll give me some more clearance to the rest of these bolts because it's really, really difficult to get in there and try and get a wrench on these things. So we'll keep on working, see what we got. All right, at first I was disappointed I couldn't get them all the way out. Looks like you probably have to drop your transmission crossbar, not crossbar, my shade brace down there needs to go away. But I thought about it, I don't care. I can get to all the oil cooler bolts now. Let me show you what it looks like down here. So those bolts right there are what was getting blocked. And I think I can access all of them now. So go ahead and pull those out. I believe there's 8. We'll see if we can't get this cooler out of here. But holy cow. Oil cooler's out now. Went ahead and set it over here. So this is what it looks like. This is our monstrosity of all the things. You can see where all the bolts are now. 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. This little guy right here is, and this one right here are where, I think it's the heater core coolant hose. Honestly, I don't know. This coolant hose right here, I don't know, it runs somewhere to the back of the motor, so that's not coming out, obviously. Went ahead and stuck the motor mount back on with 2 of the 4 bolts. And I'm going to release the pressure off the front in a minute here. This way, when I take the timing cover off, I'm not putting all that pressure on just the oil pan. Don't want to bend anything, that'd be real awkward. So we're going to go ahead and pop off the, well, we're going to go ahead and take that off, and then we can finally get our timing cover off. Wow, it's pretty, to me, this is a pretty big moment. We're finally getting to the point where we can actually take this thing apart. So that was a lot of work. That was definitely a lot of work. I didn't even get my headers all the way out of the way, like I was saying. I don't know if you heard me earlier or not, but I had to take off the shade brace, and I'm just not going to deal with that. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get this timing cover off. Finally got it off. Very happy to get to this point. Now, obviously, it's got to go back together, but hey, you know, we're making one step at a time. So now that it's all apart, pretty much what we got to do from here is take off the timing set, take off the cams, and all that stuff. So let's see now. I think that's going to be it for this video. The reason I say that is I want to go ahead and make the replacement of the cams and timing chains the next part of the video. This one's already long enough, and then we'll kind of proceed from there. So making good progress. It was just more than I was anticipating in terms of extra stuff that needs to come off, but you know what? That's why we're here to learn. And I'm definitely pretty happy with the process. Well, I mean, it's not been super fun, but the process so far has not been too terrible. Just a lot of little things. Just steel yourself for uncomfortable positions, a lot of back pain, and I think you can get through it. So like I was saying, that's where I'm going to end off this particular video. It's been a lot. It has for sure been a lot. I'm going to go take a royal crap ton of reference pictures. I forgot to show you that actually. And I want to make sure that the cam positions look identical to this. Also, another way to tell top dead center, I forgot about this, if the keyway should be facing directly 1 o'clock up the driver's side head. And if it is, you're at top to the center. So just another way to reference it if you're not entirely sure. But yeah, so that's pretty much that. I'm gonna go ahead and take some pictures, make sure all my cams are the same direction when the new ones go in. And I think that should be about it. So like I said, next video, I'm gonna go ahead and start popping off the timing chains and everything and all that stuff. We'll go ahead and get the new set in there, timed and everything like that. And then we'll start putting it back together. That'll be part 3, should be actually putting everything back together. Might make a part 4, who knows? We'll see how it goes of the actual startup tuning and everything like that. So thanks for watching. It is getting chilly out also. It's like 21 degrees outside. In the garage, it's still decently warm as a stretch. It's chilly. So thanks for watching, guys. Continue onwards. Part 2 should be out. If it's not out yet, it'll be out soon. So see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.